This is the Crowdcrux Crowdfunding Podcast with Sal Briggman, where we cover everything you need to know to launch a successful crowdfunding campaign. We speak with proven entrepreneurs who've raised money from the crowd and want to teach you how to do the same. Stay tuned because we're about to reveal how to launch your dream project with your host, Sal Briggman.
Before we get started with this podcast episode, I want to take a second to introduce you to my friends at Fulfillrite. If you need help shipping out your Kickstarter or Indiegogo perks or rewards, Fulfillrite is the absolute best company for you. I've been working with them for a while and I can vouch for their services. They make it dead simple and take all of the headache out of shipping out all of those boxes, all of those orders to your backers and your customers. If you want to check them out, go to fulfillrite.com at fulfillrite.com. What up, crowdfunders? Salvador Briggman here. Welcome back to the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. If you are new to this show, we interview entrepreneurs and people who have successfully raised money on websites like Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and we get into what they did right, the tactics, the strategies, the things that you can copy and implement into your own campaign. That is my goal here, is to improve the success rates on Kickstarter and make it so that you feel more confident going into your campaign. Now, I do have to preface today's interview in saying that there are a few audio issues, but the information is gold. Like literally, you will walk away from this being like, wow, I learned a ton. You're going to learn about one thing that this creator did to raise over $30,000 in their first day live on Kickstarter. And they're going to give you the inside scoop regarding the Kickstarter marketplace and what you have to do if you want to stand out. They also get into how they were able to get onto major media publications, something that they learned which actually changed the trajectory of how they marketed the product and how they got so many backers. And this little thing that they learned is responsible for over $900,000 raised on Kickstarter. So this is not just a tiny lesson here. As you're going out there and marketing your projects and as you're getting feedback, you can use that to fine-tune your marketing and your messaging so that you have an even more effective launch on whatever crowdfunding platform you go out there for. So I urge you, just persist through if you see any audio issues and really listen to what this entrepreneur has to say. The other thing I want to mention really quickly before we dive into today's podcast episode is that if you have not yet, go and join the community that we have on kickstarterforum.org. Kickstarterforum.org is a free resource that anyone can use to network with other campaign creators, to discover what they have to say about the things they're learning when it comes to their Kickstarter launch. And there are also lots of great resources and promos. It's really the community that I built up with my blog, this podcast, YouTube. So if you're interested in joining other people that are going through the same process that you are, you can go to kickstarterforum.org and join for free there. But without further ado, let's get into today's podcast episode. Dan, I am excited to have you on the podcast. Looking at your Kickstarter campaign, Box Throne, man, this project has raised a ton of money from nearly 4,000 backers. You had over $900,000 that you've raised with crowdfunding. And it's also for a really cool board game shelving system that I want to get into. But welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Can you tell the listeners a little bit about your product, what this was, and why it got so much attention on Kickstarter?
Yeah. So my product is an adaptable modular board game shelf, which really solved a need that hasn't really, I guess, existed up till now. Most board gamers, they sort of make do with putting their board games on just regular shelving units, including like the IKEA Kallaxes, stuff that isn't technically made for board games. So a lot of the time, either the shelves will be too shallow or there'll be a thinner type of wood that sags with age. and it won't be modular, right? Like, so if your game collection expands, you're just going to buy a second bookcase and put it right next to it. So, so our system is fully modular. So it sort of like grows and shrinks to your collection, because no board gamer's board game collection is static, right? And the shelves are fully adjustable, which is one of the things with board games, that all the boxes are different sizes. So we want to have sort of like that maximum storage capacity. So yeah, it has fully adjustable shelves as well. Like, we knew there was a need for it there just from our own personal experience, because I mean, like we're all huge board gamers.
So you're basically a board game geek. You have lots of board games, and it's like a really hassle to have them like all around your house, or just like awkwardly, I don't know, stuffed into your bookcase. So this is kind of like an easy way to maintain some organization. Make sure you don't piss off your girlfriend or your wife, with all these board games. That's really cool, man. How long did it go from like having this idea to actually launching this thing on Kickstarter?
So it's kind of funny, like about a year and a half ago, I was actually trying to launch a board game table instead. So like I had all these plans out already, and then we were talking to manufacturers. And then the Duchess board game table came out, which is like, it hit $2 million on Kickstarter. It was like one of the first low cost board game tables that came out. And I was like, oh, dang it. So I sort of pivoted everything there, but I used a lot of the same ideas and concepts that I had from that, making it a sort of an item that could be, I don't know, I guess the centerpiece of your gaming room, and adapted to a board game shelf. So not including that time, I'd probably say about a year. Like in January this year is when I approached a designer from Montreal and kind of explained to him what I was looking for, and went through it. And we had all these awesome design prototypes. And then when I went to manufacturing, we like threw it all out the window, because his designs were way too expensive to do, because they were just like so crazy. And we just went with a more like utilitarian design. But yeah, probably since January 2017.
Okay, so you saw a similar kind of product getting funding on Kickstarter, and that sort of, in a certain way, validated the idea. I imagine that with those, like seeing that product idea that you had raising money must have been like, oh man, like I had that idea.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It was like, at that point, it sort of clicked that like board game accessories could do really well on Kickstarter, because that was sort of the first one that did. So before that, it wasn't really clear how, I guess, important, board games to people who collect them, because often, like you were saying, people just sort of like put them in the closet. They'll just have like a regular IKEA table or something to play games on. So that, like you said, that validated the fact that people are willing to spend a little bit more to sort of upgrade and show off their collection.
And was this your first entrepreneurial project? Like, have you done any other businesses in the past, or have you made products before? Was this your first time, or have you done things in the past?
Yeah, I used to run a drop shipping company called the Dog Costumer, and it was dog costumes. So that's how I got into e-commerce. So like I learned a lot of the marketing stuff from that. I've also worked in startups. I was a marketing founder on a tech startup called Beyond Reality. It was a VR startup. So I also learned a lot of the marketing side from that too. But yeah, I'd probably say that's like where I started doing my entrepreneurial stuff, and none of those were nearly as successful as this. So this will prove to be a bit of a challenge as we go forward, because the scale is a lot bigger. But
dropshipping also is a very different game than doing a Kickstarter project, because dropshipping, you're not really creating the products from what I understand.
Right.
Exactly. It's more of like you're the retailer, you're selling these products, and really they're being manufactured and, created by someone else. With this, you have to do all of the manufacturing, creating, and designing yourself. How did you actually go about that as a marketer?
That's one of the reasons I brought my partner, Ken Shu, on board. So he has been in the manufacturing space for like 5 or 6 years now. His dad actually owns a factory out in China. So he's super familiar with the manufacturing process. And we went through 4 different factories trying to find the right one. And in the end, we're actually just getting it built at his dad's factory, because he's building the whole facility for us there. And we'll have complete control, things like pricing, quality, all that kind of stuff, right? There's no risk of being quote unquote backstabbed when you're halfway through the project.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing within that side. So he's in China right now, and he talks to, we're actually working with like 2 manufacturers at the same time, because like the factories specialize in different stuff, right? It becomes sort of a logistical challenge, because, like we have our acrylic and our wood made at one factory, and then our metal is at a metal stamping factory. So it's like he's handling the logistics of getting everything together. I'm in charge of the logistics of getting, I guess, everything to people's doors. So that includes the freight and the fulfillment side of it. But he's sort of getting the product rolling. Like we've been prototyping for a while, but we want to like almost like perfect the prototype, because there were basically we have like certain things got unlocked during the campaign, like new colors, like wider acrylic shelves, like new add-ons that we want to test for, as well as we're actually looking to find a better factory because of the scale of how we.
I mean, you guys raise a lot of money and you have a lot of backers.
That's part of the reason why we're moving to Ken's father's factory, is that he's building this 40,000 acre factory that's like the staff live on site. They have like a completely cross-functional on what they do.
That's insane.
They can get everything built in one factory. So originally he thought we were too small to take on in this factory, and he didn't have the specialized equipment for it. But now he's like, yeah, no, we'll do this.
Yeah, I mean, it can also
I'll build out our own facility for this and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it can also be long-term business. I mean, you guys are at the beginning of what I imagine is going to be a thriving company in the next few years. So this is your first product, so I think that says a lot. And also assembling this team, kudos on that, man, because that's very difficult to do. That's definitely one of the common themes of all the guests we've had on this show. I do want to ask you, so it seems like you just sort of like had this idea and kind of ran with it, but I know there's a lot of things between having the idea and actually getting this out there. So can you tell me the story of when you actually posted this to Reddit and some of the feedback that you got there?
Yeah, so sort of ties into what you were saying about validation, but the opposite direction. So I posted to Reddit. We had this hypervisual landing page that sort of what I thought was showing it off in a really awesome light. It kind of talked about like the different features of the product, but it was still pretty bare bones that time. Like we didn't have any of our add-ons, or we didn't have like a huge array of colors. So I was like, yeah, this seems like a good starting point to post up. People will love it. And I posted it on Reddit, and it just got destroyed. Like they were nitpicking everything from basically like the cost per square inch of storage space to I guess the design. In general, things like, for example, people would be like, oh yeah, like how much weight capacity does each shelf have? I'm like, oh, it's up to 10 kilograms because it's metal. And then I have people being like, no, it looks like it's wood, so that's a lie. And I'm like, wait, what? Like they would be almost like forcing opinions on me, like it was crazy. That's weird. But
I mean, it's also amazing feedback to get that, because it also tells you the perception of the product in their eyes.
That's exactly what I did. So like I went through afterwards, right? I found everyone's criticisms, and that's what I made my marketing plan around and structured the campaign page around. So like I knew there were about like 9 to 11 misconceptions that were on that page, right? Because the thing about Reddit is like we hit the front page of /art-board-gaming, so it became almost too much to be able to manage comment-wise. So people were sort of like giving misinformation to other people, and then that was sort of like building up. That's how things got out of control there. So I went through and found all the different misconceptions, and I'm like, okay, we need to make a marketing plan around this so that we can sort of nip it in the bud, right? People go to the campaign page and they come with those criticisms right away. They're being convinced of otherwise. So there was stuff like the storage capacity, like that one was huge, like convincing people how much the system can hold, because that's important to board gamers. Talking about the metallic structure, talking about the fact that it's modular, all those things.
So you got all of this feedback. You're having people have questions. You got the perception down. Were you just asking for like, hey, we're going to be launching on Kickstarter. Could you give us some feedback? Or was this like, hey, we'd love it if you could buy our product? Like, what were you actually asking in the post?
No, the post, all it said was, what did it say? Like a modular adaptable board game shelving system, new and coming soon. That was all the title was. And I just linked it to.
Oh, wow.
I just linked it to my website, storemyboardgames.com. And so they just went with it with their comments and criticisms, which I wasn't expecting. But like, I think part of it was too is that I was also there as a creator, and I had to let people know that. And so I was sort of like trying to manage comments, and it just sort of like blew up in my face. Like I'd be like, oh no, actually it's this. And then they're like, oh, why are you being so argumentative? I'm just like, well, okay. So it was definitely an experience of
customer relations, all that stuff.
Exactly, right? So it's sort of good to get exposure to the most critical of your audience to continue refining your product. Because like I took that feedback and I also added stuff to the product. Like one guy was like, "Oh, I don't think I'd buy it for board games, but it's pretty cool for my miniature display." And I'm like, "Whoa, I didn't even think about that." And so I got acrylic toppers made so that you could make like almost like glass-like shelves for the unit to make it a display case. Just stuff like that.
It seems like you take feedback very seriously as well. I mean, you had this whole design council. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I created the Board Game Design Council to make it more of a collaborative process. So, for example, we would one of the stretch goals was like a new color, and then we'd ask the council like what color do you want it to be, and we'd debate and have a poll. And then even more tangible design questions, like we have this extra wide shelf that originally was 60 centimeters long, which sounds like would fit any board game, but board games now are just getting crazier and bigger. And there's this one board game called Kingdom Death Monster, and it's about 64 centimeters wide. So it's just too wide to fit on there, and it won't fit on any other shelving system in existence. So when I saw that, I was like, man, that'd be really good. I don't know, that'd be a really good feature of the system if it could fit that straight on the shelf. So I went to the council, and then that was one of the things we debated, like, should we expand it by...
That sounds so cool. I went to the council.
Stuff, yeah.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but that sounded so cool. Like, you go to the council, it makes me think of like going to the Jedi Council or something.
Yeah, that's part of it. Like, it ties into the whole Box Throne theme, right? Like, it's the Box King who designed this, and you're joining the Box Kingdom. It has that kind of like whimsical medieval theme to it.
Very cool. I love that, man. That's awesome. So did you just do this all like in a Facebook group? Did you set up a forum? How did you manage all of that?
No, yeah, it's all on Facebook. Facebook, I feel like, is one of the strongest tools you have for community management, just the groups in particular. The pages, not so much, because I'm sure and your listeners probably know, but if you post something to a Facebook page, only a small fraction of your followers will actually see that. But in a Facebook group, everyone sees it. So if you have to choose between the two to set up for your Kickstarter right away, just do the group. Don't bother with the page. But I didn't know that at the time, so I made a page, 1,000 followers on the page, and then I was like, oh, I can't convert this to a group. I'll start again with a group. And then that's where I sort of like made the whole design council thing. And so everyone on that page will get a notification of every update I make on that page. So it's a great communications tool.
I think it's awesome that you recognize the value of the feedback of your community. You know, having that idea of creating a new size and taking that to the council, or even seeing on Reddit these different feedbacks. Like, that's a very powerful component of Kickstarter as well. The feedback that you get from your backers. You know, when they actually have this in their hands and they have this thing ordered, they can give you feedback on the product, or even throughout the campaign, you can leave comments and get questions and get feedback on the product. So I think you've really hit the nail on the head there, you know, with the hammer, because that's just such a key component of building something that people want. So that's really awesome to hear. Yeah,
I do feel like at the same time, like, you're still a captain of your ship, right? So not all your backers are going to know what is the best choice for your product. So, for example, like, if I just took all the feedback we had, we would have also come up with an extra wide wood base, because people were asking, like, oh, can I just get like a huge wood base so I can screw the columns into it and kind of make my own extra wide shelving system? But if we did that, we don't want to. Like, we have to test it for safety, right? Because it's such a long piece of wood, and it's composite wood, so it doesn't, like, the longer it gets, the more fragile it is. So at that length, it would be a sort of safety issue. I didn't want to jump the gun and be like, yeah, we can do that, and then like throw it random. And like, here it is, because I knew that it would be a lot more difficult than it sounded to. Like, if we made it, we'd probably have to get it made out of some kind of composite plastic resin, or at least get it like reinforced with metal wiring. So yeah, so like on that, I basically just shut it down when people were saying, they're like, oh yeah, like let's get this giant wood base going. I'm like, no guys, for this campaign, we're going to focus on what we've offered so far, because this is also getting into be an extremely complex project, all the add-ons and all the variations to the product. So if we want to keep to our delivery schedule, like, this is what we've got to keep. And so I think people respected and understood that. And at the same time, like you said, it's sort of like the beginning, right? Like, once we have, you know, the e-commerce store rolling up on storemyboardgames.com, like, people can come over and just buy more modules, or if they want, you know, a special expansion, things that are still yet to come out, like, they'll be on that store. So
exactly. Yeah. I think you do have to be the captain of your ship, as you said. said at the end of the day. Otherwise, you're just overwhelmed with all of this feedback. What were some of the other things you were doing leading up to the launch of this massive campaign? I know you mentioned building an email list. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the main reasons that we were so successful, actually, is that we had an audience on day one. So basically what I did was I got fairly liberal in the ad spend. So I found a forum. Well, I didn't find it, but there's basically this forum called BoardGameGeek.com that is like the mecca for all hardcore board gamers. That's where they go for all their news and all that kind of stuff. And ads are quite expensive, but I knew that my target audience was there.
I'm speaking to the crowdfunders in the audience who have already launched a Kickstarter campaign or have actually even successfully run a campaign. And the reason is, I think you will understand this pain point most. And that is, when you finally do raise money on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, the hardest part is not collecting the cash. The hardest part is shipping out all of those perks and rewards to your backers. It is a nightmare, my friends. It's a lot of spreadsheets, it's a lot of headache, and it's a lot of stress. That's why I recommend BackerKit. If you have not heard of BackerKit, they help you collect surveys, they help you collect data, and the entire fulfillment process is just so much easier and so many less spreadsheets when you use their software. You can check them out at backerkit.com and use CrowdCrux for a special discount.
At least that's what I thought at the time. So I dropped $500 on that and just sort of directed them to my mailing list. It was just like gifts of the shelf being built and kind of like eye-catching stuff, because it really wasn't something that anyone has seen before, like a board game shelf. Like it was sort of like a new idea. So like we did get. Like the guy was saying, the ad manager was saying, like we had some of the highest click-through rates of any ads he's seen this year because it was such a novel idea. And so a lot of the people who clicked through actually went through it. So we had 3,000 people on the mailing list to begin with. But for reasons I guess we can talk about later, I realized that our target audience is actually more of on the Facebook side of things rather than the hardcore board gaming side of things. But So I also did a lot of Facebook ads too, boost posts, just generally cheap stuff. Try to get your click-through rate down to, or your spend per click down to less than 15 cents a click, and get your relevancy score up to 9 or at least 8 in Facebook ads, and you'll get like a really efficient ad spend. And that's how I built up that email list of about 3,000 people. And so on day one, 30% of that 3,000 people clicked through to the Kickstarter campaign, and we got 30 grand on day one.
Wow.
which is hugely important for quote unquote like gaming Kickstarter's algorithm, because once you're on the front page, you're almost guaranteed to stay at least in the top 50, which means that as someone's scrolling through Kickstarter, they only have to click load more like 2 or 3 times, versus if you don't have that audience day one, if you're in the bottom half of Kickstarter projects, like you will never get up. This is barring some insane PR stunt or like a huge all of a sudden ad spend. Like Kickstarter's algorithm almost keeps top projects on top and keeps the bottom projects on the bottom because it thinks that's what people want to see. So it's very important to have day 1, 2, 3 have that nonstop momentum. And the way you can build that is with a day one audience.
Well said. And I want the audience to really take that in. I mean, you just shared a tip where you were able to raise $30,000 on your first day and really jumpstart the entire funding process. And you did that all by building up an email list and also engaging in things like Facebook ads. How did you learn Facebook ads? Was it just kind of like trial and error? Did you read a book on it? Did you, seek out a podcast or something? How did you learn that?
Well, it's actually my day job is I'm in marketing communications. So like I've been doing it at my day job for a long time, but at the same time, I also use a lot of Facebook's free resources like Facebook Blueprint. It breaks down how to use Facebook ads into easy to learn modules, all that kind of stuff. So like anyone can learn it. And the thing about Facebook ads is that like it's very easy to A/B test and trial and error yourself. So
yeah, exactly.
Like no matter how much you learn, like you're always going to learn more by testing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Well, what was the lesson you talked about when you were first going out there with the Board Game Geek Forum and you were reaching out to these hardcore gamers? You had this realization that for some reason, people that are not the hardcore gamers are the ones that are interested in the product as much as the people on Facebook. Well, can you walk me through that realization?
Yeah. So, it's basically like I sort of got it from reading the forums about the box throne that people were creating on Board Game Geek. And as I was reading through, people were saying like, oh yeah, I have 500 games. It would cost me, $1,000 and like $1,200 to refit my collection. Why would I do that? Well, I can just spend, $300 at IKEA. And then I was like, yeah, I mean, I guess in a way, when you think about it, the larger your board game collection is, the more expensive it is to kit it out. So if you have like a super large board game collection and you don't prioritize things like accessibility, like the modularity, or even the looks of it, or you already have like a custom shelving system or something like that, right? Which is typically the case. Someone who has 500 board games, they already will either have a custom shelving system or they already have like a crazy setup in place already. So they're much less likely to seek out a new storage solution. Whereas someone who's almost like just getting into it, like the first year of board game collecting, maybe they've got less than 50 games, like between 10 and 80 games. Maybe like they've been storing their games in the closet and they're just starting to look for a new storage solution. And because there's nothing else on the market, combined with the fact that board games are sort of just starting to enter their like sort of like a golden age of board games, where more people are getting into the hobby because it's it's a social experience. And so they look for a shelving solution. It's more like the casual players who are sort of like the target audience for the box throne, people who didn't have an already set up storage solution. So
exactly. Yeah. What I love about that is that you're honing in on who is experiencing the problem most that your product solves. We have these really great product ideas and we think, oh, this is going to be for everyone. And then sometimes it is, you have to market it that way. But on the back end, it's really about discovering the people that's, really experience the pain point most. And that's what you've been honing in on with all of your marketing. That's really cool, man. It clearly shows. You've had a massive success here. I want everyone to check this out. This is Box Throne. You can check it out on Kickstarter. And before we get into some of the more questions, I just want to ask you, what's been the best part of this process? Like, what did it feel like to be able to have this idea in your mind and like a year later see this amazing validation of 3,650 people who have backed the project?
Yeah, I mean, like the best moment, I think, of the entire project was, I mentioned how we got torn apart in Reddit. The best moment was seeing people from the community talk about how excited they are for the project. Like they were talking about how, like, I had one guy or like two couple guys, they were drawing their planned setups in Google SketchUp, like with their whole game room and living room, like the whole walls covered in it, and it looked amazing. And like they're talking about how they want to like color coordinate everything, and they're all getting very excited about it in the comments. And then people would come in with new questions, and they would answer their questions almost like they're managing their own community. Seeing sort of like that momentum build up into this like self-sustaining community, I think that was the most heartwarming and my proudest moment in this project, because it's just seeing people excited for it, to be honest.
That is so cool. Even just you talking now, I can tell how passionate you are about this product and also about the process that you went through in order to get this into the hands of so many people. So I think people also probably feel that from you, that this is a really genuine passion of yours to make a great product that they love. Yeah,
I hope so. Yeah. I've been board gaming forever. It was a problem that I was having. So I just knew there's other people out there with that. And I thought it'd be cool that if there was a made for board game solution out there, and I guess a lot of other people feel the same way.
Yeah, definitely. I was looking at your KickTrack statistics. It's kind of interesting, the graph that you have. Looking at your graph, it almost looks like an exponential curve in that towards, the last week, you're gaining a ton of steam, man. You're getting more and more jumps and pledges. And it's really till the end, you're just seeing a ton of funding come in. What was responsible for that? Why were you seeing such a huge acceleration towards the end?
Yeah, there were a couple of reasons. One, we got covered in Kotaku, which is a gaming magazine, which sort of broadened, I guess, our reach to people. It kind of validated it as becoming oh, this is a real thing. Like, look at this big gaming magazine covering us. So that, I feel like the day that happened, it was sort of tipping over into the exponential curve. As well, we were covered on the Dice Tower, which is a very well-known gaming news magazine in the board game community. So that PR aspect sort of like triggered that. At the same time, it's also a high ticket item. So in Kickstarter, generally, if you have a high cost item, people will back it at $1, say day one. So maybe even the people from the day one audience mailing list, and they won't feel confident enough to spend it until they see how the project evolves. So they want to see, everything added to it. They want to see all the stretch goals met. And because it's so much money, that maybe they're also, they're trying to manage their financial situation too. But once you get into the last week, that's an opportunity for you to really drive the urgency of the project. You got 1 week left, and that's all it takes to tip a lot of those the people on the fence over. So I was mailing out to my mailing list. I was posting on Facebook groups every day. You really have to drive that, I guess, the fear of missing out in that last week.
Very interesting.
To really do it.
Very interesting. How did you actually get those media publications to write about you? Was that organic? They kind of just discovered you? Did you pitch the journalist? How did you get those publications? I had to interrupt this podcast episode because I want to introduce you to my friends at The Gadget Flow. Their product discovery platform reaches 22 million people per month. They've helped more than 5,000 crowdfunding campaigns thus far, and they have a social media following of more than 700,000 followers. If you want to gain access to their marketplace and list your own product, you can go to thegadgetflow.com/submit and list your project today.
I pitched every single one of them. I don't think they're so busy. It's so easy to miss a Kickstarter, especially when you're in the holiday season or the Black Friday season. You're not going to get noticed. So I pitched to every single one of them, and I just made my media pitch. I've done a lot of media pitching in my day job as well because of marketing communications, but
that really paid off.
Yeah, it did. Job. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. So So my PR pitch, I kind of constructed it in character. If you read through the updates in the box zone, it's sort of like me as a servant of the box king, and it's sort of it's a bit tongue in cheek, and it's kind of fun. We'll call you my lord and my liege, and almost like you're also a king of this kingdom too. And so I sort of I did it in that voice, this PR pitch. So I was like, "Oh, Your Majesty, look what we found!" And I feel like that really attracted a lot of them. And we got responses from almost everyone we pitched to. They didn't all cover it, but they're all like, "Wow, this is awesome! Thanks, I'll check it out." And so that really mattered. But the Kotaku one was really amazing because not a lot of board game Kickstarters actually get covered in Kotaku. So it's great.
It's great too because it's so different from a boring normal pitch that you would get. You just have to laugh or show your coworker that. They
get so many pitches every day. They're just going to ignore it if it sounds like a press release, right? They want to be glued to your press release as they go through it. They want to see something different. So just try and be silly with it.
Yeah, definitely. Well said. Well, my last question for you here, before we get into where people can check this out, is so you seem like you have a very good grasp of the Kickstarter marketplace. You learned about the trending algorithm. You learned about the need for urgency towards the end. Do you have any other tips on the Kickstarter marketplace that you would pass on to the audience, or things you learned about that?
Basically, everything I learned about Kickstarter was from KickstarterLessons.com. It's this board game. It's a very successful board game Kickstarter guy who he basically took all his learnings and he writes a blog post every week. And I read through every single one of those blog posts. So it's just a lot of data, a lot of strategy in regards to helping you do your Kickstarter. And that's basically what I kind of put my entire Kickstarter around. But at the same time, there's also a lot of books out there that can help too. One of them was it's called Brainfluence. I actually constructed a lot of the pledge levels and the pricing levels from the psychological marketing tips in that book. So that's another one to look out for too.
Very cool. Brainfluence. I'll have to include the link to that. Was there any a tip that you could share with the audience now, something that you learned about that, or something that stood out to you?
I mean, one of the things is having a target price level, right? So on my page, I have 5 different price levels, but we made the. It's interesting because it's like a numbers game psychologically, right? So if you look through it, don't want to give too much of the secret sauce away, but it's like if you look through it, the box Duke is 149, the box Prince is 139, the box King is 229, and the box Legend is 339, right? So psychologically, you're drawn to not necessarily the lowest number, but the one that it triggers the most psychological triggers, which is 229. Because the 2 is lower than the 3, and the 3 is lower than the 4 that precedes it. And at the same time, having a 9 at the end, as everyone knows, is the way to. It
That's so funny because I was thinking of the 229.
Yeah, exactly. When you go to the page, you're most likely to go to 229. So that's how I've structured it in rewards. And so even like, for example, I could have made that 239, but I probably would have ended up with 75 as much as pledges. It sort of lets people make a decision easier. That's part of it. It's not necessarily about saving money or anything like that.
Very cool. I'll have to read that book. That's a very neat trick.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Where can people go to check out more about Box Throne? Where can they go to check out more about your website and the new products you're going to be having in the future?
So my website is storemyboardgames.com. That's where we'll be doing everything in the future. If you want to check out the Box Throne Kickstarter, you can go on there, and we have a pre-order now button. We're going to have a pledge manager open until the end of January, so you can still pre-order. And yeah.
Okay, cool. So for anyone who's interested in board games, if you're a geek, you have lots of board games, or just getting started with the hobby, this looks really cool. It's very efficient. I've had a ton of people who have just given you such great testimonials about this. So I urge you guys to go and check out Box Throne. But thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing all of these amazing tips. Like, this is a ton of great information for someone just getting started. I'm going to give you the last word here. If you want to give talking to yourself when you were a year before launching this project, if you want to give a final tip or a word of encouragement, something you wish you knew, anything like that would be greatly appreciated. But Dan, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah. All I can say is don't let discourage you, right? Like if I would have stopped after Reddit, there were people on Reddit who were telling me, just don't do it. Like why do it? Like, he makes a better product. But to me, I knew that my product, there was a market there. I knew it was a great idea. And you got to make the final decision, right? If you believe in it, you got to do it. You won't know until you launch the Kickstarter. Worst comes to worst, you can just cancel it and redo your marketing or redo your product. So yeah, just do it. Also, I was going to say, if it's me talking to myself last year, I'd tell myself to invest in Bitcoin, but that's cool.
I would have done that also. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We'll have to have you back.
Yeah, cool. It was fun.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Crowdfunding Demystified podcast. Again, my name is Salvador Briggman. Hope you really enjoyed today's episode. You got some tangible things out of it that you can apply to your own campaign, and that you also will go out there and look at some of the other archives, the other episodes that we have out there with entrepreneurs just like this one who've successfully raised money with crowdfunding. You're hearing directly from them the best practices, the best strategies that you can employ with your own launch. And now, whether you're in the middle of a campaign, you're in the you're launching in the next 2 weeks, or you're launching a year from now, I want to personally thank you so much for tuning into the show and for educating yourself a little bit going into this whole new arena of crowdfunding. I know it's really new, lots of new terminology, lots of new strategy. It's really, crowdfunding is different than any other type of marketing out there. So thank you for doing that. And if you have enjoyed these episodes, let me know. Take a second to leave a review on iTunes. Shoot me an email, shoot me a tweet, get in contact. I love talking with listeners of the show. We also have a lot more content out there on crowdcrux.com, on Amazon. I have a few books out there. We have YouTube, etc. So there's a lot that you can do to really get primed for the best practices when it comes to crowdfunding. Now, the final thing I would ask of you is, if you are new to this show and you have not yet subscribed via the iTunes app, that is a must. We are also now on Spotify, so if you're interested, you can listen to me on Spotify. I think we're like the only crowdfunding show on Spotify, but it's kind of cool now that we're getting into more and more niches and more people can discover the show that way. Again, my name is Sal, and I'll see you next time.